G'day, Dave Newman from Newman Media Collective. Today I'm going to show you how to edit a Comet pic. Basically to go from this to this. And then from this to this. Using Cyberlink Photo Director. Now, you can use other photo editors if you wish, and there's nothing wrong with that. The process is going to be very similar. Many of the settings are the same. Many of the ways you go about it is the same. So even if you don't use Cyberlink Photo Director, you can still learn from this on how some of the settings will affect your photo. This is the raw version, as you can see over here. It's ARW, but it's really RAW. I don't know why it does it that. That's something to do with the camera. You can see that this one here is a JPEG. This one is ARW, but I've edited it. So we're going to play with this one. Basically, we're going to do pretty much the same process that I normally go through for most of the pictures. So we'll start off, this is currently in the library setting. So we're going to go to Adjust. Now Adjust has a heap of settings here, and this is on Power Director. You'll find that a lot of the settings here are the same on other photo editing apps, so you can use the same sort of thing. Some may have slightly different settings, some may have more or less settings, and it might be a different way of actually changing them. There might be a plus and minus button and things like that. Basically, the type of settings that I change on this, just look at what it is on your app if you're using a different app and try to get the closest one to it. There is, as you can see, there's some things like auto color enhancement, filter color. I don't normally use that. I sometimes have used the auto color enhancement. You got white balance. Sometimes I don't use it very often. So as shot is basically just as it was on the camera, what the setting was on the camera. There's an auto tone, which I do use because sometimes it comes up pretty good. I then adjust it a little bit myself. So that's one of the first things I normally go is onto the auto tone. I'll click on that. As you can see, it's brightened it all up. That's not bad because this is a Comet pic and it's a night pic. Sometimes it'll brighten it too much, especially look down there. It may or may not matter, but what I have been doing on the pics lately is on the exposure here, I've actually been dropping it down just a couple of notches so it's not so bright. All the rest of the figures here, you can adjust them. It's up to you on how much you want the different brightness settings and that, and if you play around with it, you can definitely get it looking a lot better. But what I do generally tends to improve it the way I want to improve it without playing around with those too much. And the main settings I use are these next ones. You've got tinge and dehaze. Now I'm not going to go into details on what they're supposed to do or the definitions of them and all that sort of stuff. I'm just going to show you what I normally do. Dehaze is one that I really like the effect that it gives. Now I'm going to show you the extremes of the effect and then around about where I normally put it. So if I go all the way to the left, and this has a scale, as you can see, just here it's got a scale. I can go up and down and do it individually, point by point. You can see the histogram moves with it as well, or you can just grab it and move it like that. Now it goes all the way to 100, and if I go all the way to 100 to the left, you can see it's basically just a white screen. All the way to 100 to the right, quite dark. It actually doesn't look too bad. It looks a little bit artistic, and that alone wouldn't be a bad spot to leave it in reality, because to me, I reckon that looks pretty good. But that is going to the extreme, and what I normally would do is I'd normally have it a bit less, depending on the photo. A lot of it depends on the photo. So I'm also going to do some other settings, so I may come back to this one, but at the moment I'm looking at, for this particular photo, probably around the 40s, 50 maybe. I don't want to go right to the extreme, although I could, and it still would look alright. So I'll leave it around here, and then I'll go to the next ones and show you the next ones I do. So the next ones I do is in here, in the tinge. Saturation is going to give it more color. I can go left and it'll actually take color away. It makes it grey. If you want to get a black and white effect, that's one way you could do it. Going to the right, it's going to add a lot of vibrance in color. ironically, vibrance is the setting above it. But I reckon that the saturation, in a sense, it basically makes the colors more vibrant. Now that's really brighten them up. You've got the orangey and yellow in here, and especially when you compare it to where we started, which is there, there's a lot of difference. Actually, no, sorry, there. That's the JPEG. I can't see it on this. Disregard. So you can see how much better it's come up. Now that's with it fully on 100, and once again I could leave it fully on 100 or I can bring it back. Now there's a lot of areas when I'm bringing this back it is getting a bit grayer, which I don't really want it grey. I'm tempted to leave that at 100 the way this is coming up. You still can see there's a fair bit of the tail from the Comet there. But what I will do is play with the vibrance as well. Now the vibrance will change the colour in it. If I go there, once again, it gets more towards black and white. I go to the right, it gets a really dark in the colours, probably a bit too dark. Once again, artistically wise, may be great. Doesn't look bad, but you will find that some of the edges start becoming very pronounced when you use that. So we'll bring that back a bit. And you can see, especially if you look at the edges, you can see where the edges darken up. I might bring this one back a little. Bringing it back is actually darkening the top of the sky, which isn't a bad thing. Now the clarity is a little bit different, and you're not going to notice a lot of difference with the clarity on this sort of pit. Some other photos you'll notice a much bigger difference. One of the good things for clarity is if you have things like, for instance, a waterfall or something, and you want to make it look like it's not so much blurred, but you know, the flow effect that they have where it's the soft focus sort of effect. Clarity is good for stuff like that. If you move it to the right, it's going to sharpen it. If you move it to the left, it's going to soften it. That's the simplified version of it. So on this particular photo, you're not going to see a huge difference, although what you will see is the Comet will become a little bit sharper. And I'll zoom in on it just so you can see, because most of the rest of it, you're not going to see much difference. So you can see there. Now if I go to the left, it'll soften it. Won't see a lot of difference, but let me show you. Okay, so we go to the left. As you can see, not a lot of difference. Go to the right, and it's just a little bit brighter down the bottom here. It's sharpened it a little bit. You can't see a lot of difference on this particular type of photo. As I said, that's fully left, that's fully right. You can see it probably more in the stars. Some of the stars with it fully left are a lot faded, and fully right, they're a lot brighter. So if you're looking at that, just fully left, fully right, you can see the difference in the stars and the Comet a little bit, but there's not very much. It's something that these sort of photos, not a big difference on. What I have been doing is I have been putting it a little bit more to the right, and that's, as I said, that's, if anything, brightening up the stars a little bit and a little bit on brightening the Comet as well. So we'll go back, and already this is looking a lot different to what we started with. As you can see, there's a lot more color in it, and the settings I've got are around about half extra on clarity, vibrance and saturation, and dehaze. They're all for this particular photo, and you will find different photos you will want different settings, because it depends on how bright the photo is to start with, as well as other things. So as a rough thing so far, what we've done, just to recap, we did the auto tone. We then went down and we moved the dehaze, and I can just check that again. Now that I've done the tinge with the clarity, vibrance and saturation, I then normally revisit the dehaze and say, okay, is it going to be better in a slightly different position? So I normally do that. I normally come back to it and just check it again just to see if it is going to be better. Now looking at it on 100, it's quite dark. It still looks all right, but I'd say that's too dark myself for what I would like. If I go down to either in the like 10, well, it starts at 0, obviously, and at 0, it's not bad, but it does seem really bright. I like it a bit darker. So around that 40-50 mark is around about the sweet spot for this particular photo, and I've sort of number based on the photo you have. So you just got to play around with it a bit and get it into where it's a spot where it looks the way you want it to look. Now there are other things on here, and there's only one other one I've been using lately. I'm not an expert on all these histograms and that with it. People that know more about that can play around with that. I'm sure there's YouTube tutorials about all that sort of stuff. The coloring here you can play around with. I mean, there's an orange there. I can bring out the orange a lot sharper on that. It's something you can do. The yellow, okay, so there's a yellow here. You can make it more yellow. You can play around with these as much as you want. The blues, all the colors, obviously going to the left, like I said before, it's similar to the other ones. It'll basically gray them. It takes all the color out of them. Going to the right brings more color into them. And the amount you put in, well, it's really up to your own taste. Full yellow, no yellow, and as you can see, it's basically gray now. There's quite a few colors here. There's 8 different colors that you can play around with, and yeah, just do with them. If you want to play with them, do them. It's also got your hue and your lightness for each particular color. So there's a lot you can play around with there. Generally, I don't much. As I said, I'm no expert. Split toning, well, that's another specific type thing. I'm not going to go into that. Shadows, you can change the stuff for shadows. Sharpness, a little bit like what we said with the sharpness on the comets and the stars. You can play around with sharpness. Now, the one other one I have been using a bit, and I think I used it a couple of times, and a couple of times I used it and then actually deselected it, is noise reduction. So it's once again, it's got an auto denoise, and let's just see what it does. And once again, you might not see a lot of difference. Okay, and there was a bit. If anything, it actually looks like a softer focus. It actually didn't come up too bad on that one. So I'll just undo it so you can see what it was like before. Okay, you can see it's more grainy. I'll zoom in so you can get a better view. Okay, let's look at it this way. You can see it looks grainy. We'll go on the denoise again on the auto. You can still see the grains, but it's not quite as much. You probably notice it a little bit on the stars as well. So I'll just undo it again. See this star here, in particular, it actually gets a little bit duller. But that's not too bad. The one thing with the Comet being that it's got a tail, which is at this time it's getting very faint, so you can barely see it. So you want to make sure that you're not really losing that, and it doesn't look like it is. Now there's one other denoise part on this program which I think actually does an even better job, and I suppose that's a little bit up to opinion, but I'm going to show you it anyway. So up here where it's currently in edit mode, it's got a guided. So we're going to guided. Now you can see the same picture. Now here you can see there's a denoise here. You've got a couple of things. Image enhancer. Now I haven't been using this one. I have tried it and it came up looking pretty ordinary. The image enhancer gives you auto tone, auto color enhancement, and face enhancement. Obviously face enhancement's no good for this one. Auto color enhancement, maybe. Auto tone, maybe. Just to give you a quick idea, let's play around with it just very quickly. So let's go with auto color enhancement. You basically click the selection and click apply. It goes through the processing. Usually only takes 30 seconds, if that. Doesn't take very long. And the other thing I can do on here for you, I can split screen so you can see the difference. Now you see the coloring there. It actually looks like it's done a denoise sort of thing at the same time. Doesn't look too bad. Let's go on the split screen. So that's the difference. That's the original. That's what it's done with the color enhancement. And that's not too bad. In fact, to me, just looking at that one now, it almost looks like it's done exactly the same as what I'm going to do with the denoise, which is a little bit weird because I didn't expect it to do that. So the auto tone, let's chuck that on as well. This is just all a little bit experiment. I've got to click up. I thought I had to click apply again, but it looks like it's just automatically done it. If I take it off, So the auto tone is very quick. It doesn't look like it's made much difference at all. Certainly not significant. I might have brightened it up a little bit, maybe slightly. The other thing to do here is let's zoom in on it a bit. So let's zoom in on the Comet itself. And you can see here what it's done is, and this is all basically on AI, I believe, it's very much denoised it. You can see it's all grainy over here, and here it's not. It's very smooth. And what I will do, just to show you, and I'm a little bit surprised at that, to be honest, because I didn't expect it to do that. I'm going to undo that, both of those. So we're back to, okay, now we're back to that. Now what I'm going to do is go on the denoise, and what I think you'll find is that it does pretty much the same thing. Now you click on denoise, you click apply, and then you can change the slider for how much you want it to make a difference. It takes a few seconds once again, and you will see a fair bit of difference here. You see it's a lot smoother. I'll zoom in again on the Comet so you can get an idea. You see it's very smooth in comparison to this one. Here's really grainy. Looks pretty good. Maybe there's a bit of the tail is gone from it. I mean, you can't really see it much here either, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. You can sort of just see it's almost like a smudge. That's pretty good. You can actually take the strength out. We'll go close up again, and I'll just show you the difference with the strength. So if I slide this slider there, and you can see it starts getting grainier again. Basically, all the way back to 0, it's the same. And you can actually adjust it to a point where you want it if you don't want it to go all the way to the 100%. And maybe you don't. It depends on the picture once again. I mean, it does get very smooth on the 100%. Maybe it's a little bit too smooth. Maybe not. It's all a matter of opinion, really. I've been mostly leaving it on 100%. And that's just what I've been doing. So if I go back to the full picture, that's what we've got. And you'll see that's fairly similar in the coloring compared to what I had on the other picture that I showed you before. There's some good color in the bottom here. The sky's a nice darkish blue. If anything, this cloud here almost looks a little bit the wrong color. It's similar color to what it is over here. I'm not sure how or why that's come up like that way, but that's what it's done. It's still, for me, I think it still works. The cloud actually goes in front of the Comet here. You can barely tell, but it does. I mean, the Comet, the tail of it's going up really to that sort of area there. But unfortunately, the Comet's fading a bit now, and this was only taken last night, so it is what it is. So from this point here, what I would do now is I'd just go out of the denoise. Okay, that's our picture as we have it now. At this point, I would actually save it, and I go save as. Now, because it's saving as a PNG file, which is just what my files are set up to do, it's saving under the same name. Now, the original file, remember, we were playing with the file that was the RAW, or raw file. So because it's changed to a different file, it's kept the name the same. What I normally do is I normally go into it and I just put a -1, just so that I know that it's one that's been edited. And that way I can keep the raw file separate, even though it is going to be separate anyway because it's a different file extension. So I'll save that. And then I'll go back to library, and it asks if I want to add the photo to library. That's talking about adding it to the library on this actual program, so this program can still see it. Now, I normally would say yes. Now, there's one other thing that I would normally do here, which is a different thing again, but it's worth showing you as well. The other thing I would normally do on a photo like this, if I'm going to post it to social media and that, is I'll normally put a watermark on it. So I'll show you the way you do that. Once again, we can go into different areas. Adjuster's got all those tools, but and there's presets, which has some other things as well. But the one we want to go to once again is over on the guided. So we'll go to the guided again. Now this time we go to, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can either do a text and add text to it, or you can go to elements and you can create a watermark. And once you've created a watermark, you're going to have watermark templates. If you save it as a watermark template, you've got templates. That's the best way to do it, because that way you don't have to make it every single time. So I've got watermark templates, and this is one that I made up just recently. I'm not going to say it's the best, it's something that I've got on there. And then what you have to do is, you've got a choice. You can save it separately, or you can save it so that it goes to the library. I've been saving it separately and just not having it go into the library, so I can play around with that photo. And if I want to change the watermark on it later, I can. So all I do here is, on this one when I'm saving it, and this is saying it's edited one, why is this? Because that's the one that it just saved back into the library. So I'll go back, and I'll go back to the -1, and I just put a W next to it, just so I know that one's a watermarked one. Now that's saved in there. I go out of this. If I go back to the library now, it'll say, do I want to add it? This is a choice for you. You can add it, and then you've got that one there. I normally don't, because if I'm going to play around with it again, I don't want to play around with it with the watermark on it, because it'll mess around the watermark as well. And that's basically it. So if we look at what we've now done, let me go back to this one here. That's what we started with, and hopefully I click on the right way. That's what we've now got. So that's the edited one, and finally the one with the watermark on it as such. So hopefully you've learnt a bit from this instruction on how to basically make your pictures come up better. It's going to be a little bit different if you use different programs, but this gives you a good idea on what you can do. And as you can see, I think it came up looking pretty good. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but well, nothing ever is. So enjoy your editing, and if you feel like showing me some of the efforts you've managed to do, chuck them in the comments. I'd love to see them. Okay, have a great one.